I always believed family meant something. That blood was thicker than water, that the ties that bound us together were unbreakable. How naive I was. My name is Olivia Brennan, and for 32 years, I've been the forgotten daughter, the afterthought in my parents' grand plans for my brother, Michael. I wish I could say there was a moment when I realized my place in the family hierarchy, but the truth is more painful. It was a slow erosion of my worth, a lifetime of subtle dismissals and quiet disappointments. Growing up in our modest suburban home, I was the studious one. While Michael excelled at sports, bringing home trophies and newspaper clippings that my parents proudly displayed on the mantel, I buried myself in books. I graduated valedictorian, earned a full scholarship to Princeton, and eventually built a career in finance that most would envy. But somehow, none of my achievements ever seemed to measure up to Michael's high school football victories or his mediocre grades at the state university. "We're just so proud of how well-rounded Michael is," my mother would say at family gatherings, while my father would clap my brother on the back. "He's got that perfect balance of academics and athletics." My straight A's and academic honors were mentioned as afterthoughts, if at all. "Oh, and Olivia's doing well in school too. I thought things would change when we grew up." That's what I told myself during those painful teenage years when I'd cry myself to sleep after another dinner conversation focused entirely on Michael's latest accomplishment. Adults would recognize achievement differently, I reasoned. Success would speak for itself. But then came the inheritance. It was 3 years ago when my grandmother passed away. We'd always been close, perhaps because she was the only one who seemed to see me. She'd slip me books when I was young, encourage my studies, and whisper to me that my mind would take me places. "You're special, Olivia," she'd say. "Don't let anyone tell you different." The reading of her will was held in the wood-paneled office of her attorney, Mr. Greenberg. A thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, he seemed uncomfortable as we gathered around the large oak table, my parents, Michael and his wife Stephanie, and me. "Eleanor Brennan was very specific about her wishes," Mr. Greenberg began, shuffling through the papers before him. "I'll begin with the specifics. My grandmother had been wealthy, not extravagantly so, but comfortable enough to leave behind a substantial estate. Her house in Vermont, her collection of first-edition books, some jewelry, and nearly $2 million in investments." I listened, my heart hammering in my chest, as Mr. Greenberg methodically went through the will. The house went to my father. The jewelry was split between my mother and Stephanie. Michael received her car collection, 3 classic vehicles my grandmother had maintained perfectly. And then Mr. Greenberg paused, glancing at me briefly before continuing. "The remainder of the estate, including Eleanor's investment portfolio valued at approximately $1.8 million and her collection of first-edition books, goes to her granddaughter, Olivia Brennan." The silence in the room was deafening. I could feel their eyes on me, my mother's shock, my father's confusion, Michael's growing anger. I sat perfectly still, my face a careful mask despite the tears threatening to spill. "There must be some mistake," my father finally said, breaking the silence. "Mother always intended her estate to be divided equally." Mr. Greenberg adjusted his glasses. "I assure you, Mr. Brennan, there is no mistake. Eleanor was very clear about her wishes. She left a letter explaining her decisions, which I am instructed to give to Olivia privately." Later that evening, alone in my apartment, I opened my grandmother's letter with trembling hands. "My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, I've finally moved on from this world. Don't mourn me too long. I've had a good life, filled with love and adventure. I've watched you grow into an extraordinary woman, brilliant and kind despite the shadow you've been forced to live in. I've seen how your parents have favored your brother, how your accomplishments have been overlooked, how your heart has been bruised by their blindness. This is not an inheritance born of favoritism. That would make me no better than them. This is recognition. This is acknowledging the strength it takes to bloom in the shade. The money is yours because I know you'll use it wisely. The books are yours because you're the only one who truly appreciates them. Let this be the beginning of your story, not defined by what you weren't given, but by what you make of what you have now. All my love, Grandma Eleanor." I cried that night, deep, heaving sobs that seemed to come from the very core of my being. Not just for my grandmother, but for the lifetime of invisibility that she had somehow seen through. The next morning, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Olivia, we need to talk about your grandmother's will." Her voice was tight, controlled. I knew that tone. It was the one she used when she was trying to manipulate a situation. "What about it?" I asked, my own voice, surprisingly steady. "Well, it's just that it seems so unfair to Michael. Your father and I were thinking that perhaps we could redistribute things. After all, family should be equal." Equal. The word hung in the air like a bad joke. Equal. I repeated slowly. Like how you and Dad paid for Michael's entire college education but told me I was on my own. Like how you funded his wedding but couldn't be bothered to help with my down payment. Like how every Christmas, his pile of gifts towers over mine. My voice was rising now, years of pent-up resentment bubbling to the surface. "When has anything ever been equal in this family, Mom?" "That's different," she huffed. "Michael needed." "No." I cut her off. "This isn't different at all. For once, something was given to me instead of him, and suddenly equality matters?" Grandma made her choice. I'm honoring it. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in years, I felt something new stirring within me. Not just anger or hurt, but power. The family dynamics deteriorated rapidly after that. My parents and Michael barely spoke to me for months, except for the occasional text message probing about my plans for the inheritance. My father once cornered me at a family dinner, suggesting that I should do right by the family and set up a trust for Michael's children, my niece and nephew, whom I adored despite everything. "Think about what your grandmother would really want," he said, his voice lowered as if we were conspiring. She was confused near the end. She wouldn't want to create this kind of rift. I smiled tightly. "Actually, Dad, Grandma was perfectly lucid, and she left me a letter explaining exactly why she made the choices she did." His face reddened. "Let me see this supposed letter." "No," I said simply. "It was private between me and Grandma." That night, as I drove home, my mind raced with memories. Christmas mornings when Michael's pile of presents dwarfed mine. My high school graduation, when my parents threw a modest dinner but had rented out an entire restaurant for Michael's a year earlier. The time I won a national economics competition in college and my parents couldn't attend because Michael had a regular season baseball game. It wasn't just the inheritance that had opened my eyes, it was the reaction to it. The swift, almost visceral anger that I would dare to have something they couldn't control or take from me. I decided then that I wouldn't just passively accept my grandmother's gift. I would use it to reclaim my place in the world, to finally step out of the shadows. And if that process revealed some uncomfortable truths to my family along the way, well, perhaps that was part of my grandmother's plan all along. 6 months after the will reading, I quit my job at the investment firm where I'd worked for 8 years. I'd been planning a career change for some time, but my grandmother's inheritance gave me the financial freedom to make the leap. I enrolled in a specialized business program focusing on rare book authentication and dealing, combining my finance background with my love for literature. Around the same time, I purchased a small but elegant townhouse in a historic district, not far from where my grandmother had lived. The first thing I did was convert the front room into a library, installing custom shelving for my growing collection of rare books, including those my grandmother had left me. I invited my family to a housewarming party. To my surprise, they all came. Perhaps curiosity overrode their resentment. I watched them wander through my new home, my mother running her fingers along the marble countertops, my father eyeing the restored hardwood floors, Michael examining the view from the terrace. "This must have cost a fortune," my mother remarked, a hint of accusation in her voice. "I made good investments," I replied simply. "With Mom's money," my father muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. I ignored the jab and continued giving them the tour. When we reached the library, my mother's eyes widened at the sight of my grandmother's first editions displayed prominently on the central shelves. "Those should be in the family home," she said tightly, "where everyone can enjoy them." I ran my fingers along the spine of a well-loved copy of Pride and Prejudice, my grandmother's favorite. Grandma knew I'd appreciate them. When's the last time any of you read a book that wasn't a bestseller or a golf magazine? Michael snorted. Look at Miss Intellectual over here. It's not about being intellectual, I said, keeping my voice level. It's about knowing what matters to people. Grandma knew I loved these books. She knew I'd treasure them. She should have considered the entire family, my father insisted. I turned to face him directly. She did consider the entire family. She made her choices based on a lifetime of observations. Maybe you should ask yourself why those choices don't align with what you expected. The room fell silent. For the first time, I directly challenged the family narrative. I hadn't raised my voice or made a scene, but I'd spoken a truth they weren't prepared to hear. The rest of the evening was strained, conversations stilted and superficial. They left earlier than planned, with tight hugs and promises to do this again soon. Promises we all knew were empty. As I closed the door behind them, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The family I had spent my life trying to please, trying to earn love and recognition from, might never see me clearly. But perhaps that wasn't what mattered anymore. A year passed. I completed my specialized training and opened a small, exclusive rare book dealership. My reputation in the field grew quickly. I had an eye for quality and authenticity, and my financial background gave me an edge in valuations and investments. I expanded my grandmother's collection, focusing on feminist literature and overlooked female authors of the 18th and 19th centuries. My relationship with my family remained distant but cordial. Holiday gatherings were obligatory affairs, filled with surface-level pleasantries and carefully avoided subjects. No one mentioned my grandmother or her will anymore, though the tension lingered just beneath the veneer of normalcy. Then came the announcement. Michael and Stephanie were planning to renew their vows for their 10th anniversary. It would be a lavish affair at an exclusive country club, with a weekend of events leading up to the ceremony. We really want the whole family involved, Michael told me over one of our rare phone calls. Mom and Dad are throwing us an engagement dinner on Friday, the ceremony is Saturday afternoon, and then there's a brunch on Sunday. Sounds lovely, I said, genuinely happy for them despite everything. Just let me know what I can do to help. There was a pause on the line. Well, actually, we were hoping you might contribute financially. You know, since you're doing so well now. I blinked in surprise. Contribute? How much were you thinking? We were hoping you could cover the ceremony and reception, he said casually, as if asking me to pick up milk on the way home. It's about $40,000. The audacity left me momentarily speechless. Michael, that's a significant amount. Come on, Liv, he said, using the childhood nickname he knew I had a soft spot for. It's not like you can't afford it. And we're family. Isn't that what family does? Supports each other. I closed my eyes, counting slowly to 10. I'll think about it, I said finally. Send me the details. After hanging up, I sat in my library, surrounded by my grandmother's books, our books now, and thought about what family truly meant. Was it blind loyalty? Unquestioning financial support? Or was it something deeper, something based on mutual respect and recognition? I made my decision. The engagement dinner was held at an upscale restaurant downtown. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings, and white roses adorned every table. My parents had spared no expense, a fact my mother mentioned at least 3 times during the first course. We wanted everything to be perfect for Michael and Stephanie, she said, beaming at the couple. Nothing but the best for our son. I sipped my wine silently, watching the dynamics play out as they always had. My father regaling the table with stories of Michael's childhood achievements. My mother fussing over Stephanie, already planning activities with her grandchildren during the weekend festivities. When the main course arrived, Michael clinked his glass for attention. I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight, he said, his arm around Stephanie. This weekend means the world to us. And I especially want to thank Mom and Dad for this amazing dinner. He raised his glass in their direction. And tomorrow's going to be even more special. My mother turned to me, a practiced smile on her face. Olivia, Michael tells me you're helping with the ceremony. That's so generous of you. All eyes at the table turned to me. I set down my wine glass carefully. Actually, I said, keeping my voice pleasant, Michael and I are still discussing the details. Michael's smile faltered slightly. I thought we had it all worked out, Liv. You're covering the ceremony and reception, right? The table fell silent. I could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on me, the familiar pressure to acquiesce, to keep the peace, to ensure that Michael got what Michael wanted. I've decided to contribute $5,000 as my gift to you and Stephanie, I said evenly. It's a generous wedding present, and I hope you'll use it for something meaningful. Michael's face darkened. That's not what we discussed. We didn't actually discuss anything, Michael. You told me what you wanted, and I said I'd think about it. My father cleared his throat. Olivia, your brother's celebration is important. Surely you can be more supportive. More supportive, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Like you were of my college graduation? Or my first gallery opening? Or when I bought my home? That's different, my mother interjected quickly. We've always supported you. Have you? I asked softly. Because from where I'm sitting, support in this family has always flowed in one direction. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Stephanie looked uncomfortable, glancing between Michael and me. My father's jaw was clenched tight. My mother appeared on the verge of tears, her usual tactic when confronted with unpleasantness. Michael finally broke the silence. If that's how you feel, maybe you shouldn't come to the ceremony at all. The words hung in the air like a challenge. In the past, I would have backpedaled, apologized, found a way to smooth things over. But I wasn't that person anymore. If that's what you want, I said, rising from my seat. I placed an envelope on the table, the card containing my check and well wishes. Congratulations on your renewal. I hope it's everything you deserve. I walked out of the restaurant with my head held high, ignoring my mother's calls behind me. For the first time in my life, I had refused to be diminished for Michael's benefit. The night air felt crisp and clean in my lungs, and despite the scene behind me, I felt strangely at peace. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages and missed calls. My mother, distraught. My father, demanding I apologize. Friends and extended family who had heard various versions of what had transpired. I turned my phone off and spent the day in my library, losing myself in the worlds my grandmother had introduced me to, worlds where women claimed their power, where justice eventually prevailed, where being true to oneself was the greatest victory. In the afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Stephanie standing on my porch, looking uncomfortable in her designer sundress. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let her enter. We had never been close. Stephanie had always aligned herself with my parents and Michael, understanding which side held the power in our family dynamic. She walked into my living room, glancing around with genuine appreciation. "Your home is beautiful, Olivia. Really beautiful." "Thank you," I said, still wary. "Would you like some tea?" She nodded, and we moved to the kitchen in silence. As I prepared the tea, she sat at my island counter, fidgeting with her wedding ring. "Michael doesn't know I'm here," she finally said. "None of them do." I placed a cup of tea in front of her. "Why are you here, Stephanie?" She wrapped her hands around the cup, not meeting my eyes. I wanted to apologize. What happened last night, it wasn't right. Of all the things I expected her to say, an apology wasn't on the list. "Go on," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I've watched for years how they treat you, how they dismiss you. I never said anything because..." She trailed off. "Because it was easier not to." I finished for her. She nodded, finally looking up at me. "I was wrong. We all were. And asking you to pay for our vow renewal it was Michael's idea, but I went along with it. I knew it wasn't fair, but I didn't stop him." "Why now?" I asked. "Why are you suddenly seeing this after 10 years in the family?" Stephanie took a deep breath. "Because last night, after you left, they talked about you. The things they said, it was like they didn't see you as a person with your own life and choices. just an extension of what they wanted. And I realized that someday they might talk about my children that way. About Emma if she doesn't live up to their expectations, or if Ethan doesn't follow the path they think he should. I felt a chill run through me at the thought of my niece and nephew being subjected to the same pattern. The ceremony is at 4 today, Stephanie continued. I'd really like you to be there. Not for Michael or your parents, but for me and the kids. They love their Aunt Olivia. I considered her words carefully. I appreciate you coming here, Stephanie. I really do. But I can't pretend everything is fine anymore. I can't keep playing my assigned role in the family drama. She nodded slowly. I understand. But maybe there's another role you could play. Not the one they've assigned you, but one you choose. After she left, I sat in my library again, thinking about choices and consequences, about patterns that repeat unless someone has the courage to break them, about my niece and nephew, and what they might learn from watching the adults in their lives. By 3 o'clock, I had made my decision. The country club was decorated in whites and soft blues, with flowing draperies and floral arrangements creating an atmosphere of romantic elegance. I arrived just as guests were being seated for the ceremony, dressed in a deep emerald gown that I knew brought out the green in my eyes, my grandmother's eyes. My mother spotted me first, her expression cycling rapidly through surprise, relief, and wariness. She hurried over, her voice low. Olivia, I'm glad you came to your senses. Please, let's not have any scenes today. This is Michael's day. I smiled serenely. I'm just here for the ceremony, Mom, and I've brought a gift. I handed her a small, wrapped package. She took it automatically, confusion evident on her face. What is this? Open it after the ceremony, I said. I think you'll find it enlightening. The renewal ceremony was beautiful in its way, Michael and Stephanie standing before friends and family, recommitting to their vows. I watched from the back row, observing rather than participating, noting how my father beamed with pride throughout, how my mother dabbed at tears with a monogrammed handkerchief. During the reception, I kept to myself, politely declining invitations to join the head table with the family. I spoke with distant relatives and old friends, engaged in pleasant conversation about my business and my home. I didn't approach my parents or Michael. As the evening wound down, I noticed my mother in a quiet corner, the package I had given her open in her lap. From her stricken expression, I knew she had read its contents. I made my way to her side, sitting down beside her silently. Where did you get this? She asked, her voice barely audible over the music and laughter. Grandma gave it to Mr. Greenberg with instructions to pass it to me a year after her death. I explained. It's her journal from the years before she died. My mother stared down at the leather-bound book. She wrote about all of us. Yes, I said simply. She documented everything. Every missed event of mine. Every time you and Dad prioritized Michael. Every dismissive comment. And her own regrets for not intervening sooner. Tears spilled down my mother's cheeks. Why are you showing me this? To hurt me? No, I said gently. To help you see what I never could make you understand with just my words. Grandma saw it all, Mom. She was trying to right a wrong with her will, not create a new one. My mother closed the journal, her hands trembling. I never meant to. We never thought. I know, I said, and I meant it. You didn't do it consciously. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. That doesn't mean it didn't shape me, shape all of us, into the family we are now. I stood up, smoothing down my dress. The journal is yours to keep. Read it, share it with Dad if you want. I have my own copy. As I turned to leave, my mother reached for my hand. Olivia, wait. Please. I paused, looking down at her. Are we going to be okay? She asked, vulnerability plain on her face. I considered her question carefully, thinking about the years of hurt, the patterns so deeply ingrained, the recent confrontations and revelations. I don't know, I answered honestly. That depends on what happens next, on whether anything actually changes. I squeezed her hand once, then let go. I love you, Mom. I always have. But I love myself too now. And that means I can't accept being less than anymore. In the months that followed, things did change, though slowly and not without setbacks. My mother began reaching out more regularly. Awkward phone calls at first, then gradually more natural conversations. My father was more resistant, still convinced that I had somehow manipulated my grandmother in her final years. Michael and I maintained a cool distance, though Stephanie brought the children to visit me often. I delighted in introducing Emma to the world of literature that had sustained me, watching her eyes light up at the adventures of Elizabeth Bennet and Jo March. Ethan was less interested in books but loved hearing about my business dealings, showing an entrepreneurial spirit that made me smile. My business continued to thrive. I expanded to a larger location, adding a small cafe where literary discussions and book clubs could gather. I donated generously to scholarships for underprivileged students interested in literature and the arts, creating opportunities one wished I'd had when I was younger. A year after the vow renewal, my parents asked if they could visit me. They arrived on a Sunday afternoon, tentative in a way I'd never seen them before. My mother brought flowers. My father carried a large, flat package wrapped in brown paper. We sat in my library, the heart of my home, surrounded by the books that had shaped me. There was an uncomfortable silence until my father cleared his throat. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, his voice gruff with emotion. "A lot of remembering. And your mother and we've realized some things about the past that we're not proud of." My mother reached for my hand. "Reading your grandmother's journal was painful, but necessary. We never saw how our actions affected you, Olivia. We never understood the hurt we caused. We can't change the past," my father continued, "but we wanted to acknowledge it. And maybe start building something better." He handed me the brown paper package. I unwrapped it carefully to find a framed photograph I'd never seen before, me at about 7 years old, sitting on my grandmother's lap as she read to me. We were both laughing, completely absorbed in each other and the story before us. "Your grandmother gave this to us years ago," my mother explained. "She told us to look at it whenever we forgot what really mattered. We didn't understand then. We do now." I traced the image with my fingertips, tears blurring my vision. Where was this all these years? My father looked down, shame evident in his posture. "In a box in the attic. We weren't ready to see what it meant." I hung the photograph in a place of honor above my desk, where I could see it every day, a reminder of the woman who had truly seen me and of the family that was, however imperfectly, trying to see me now. Today, 3 years after my grandmother's passing, her legacy lives on in ways I don't think even she could have anticipated. The inheritance she left me wasn't just financial, it was the courage to stand in my truth, to demand recognition not as the forgotten daughter, but as a woman of worth and substance. My relationship with my family continues to evolve. There are still moments of tension, old patterns that threaten to reassert themselves. But there is awareness now, an understanding that was lacking before. My parents make genuine efforts to engage with my life and interests. Michael and I maintain a careful civility, though I doubt we'll ever be truly close. Stephanie has become an unexpected ally and friend. She brings the children to visit regularly, and I've become a central figure in their lives, the aunt who sees them clearly, who celebrates their unique qualities rather than measuring them against arbitrary standards. My rare book business has grown into a cultural touchstone in our community. I host events highlighting overlooked female authors, organize writing workshops for young women, create spaces where voices like mine, once silenced or dismissed, can ring out clear and true. And sometimes, in the quiet moments when I'm alone in my library, surrounded by the books my grandmother loved, I feel her presence. Not as a ghost or spirit, but as a continuing influence, a guiding wisdom that helped me find my way out of the shadows. The inheritance she left me wasn't just money or books. It was recognition. It was a mirror held up to show me my own worth when no one else would. It was the catalyst for the reckoning our family needed, painful but necessary, like lancing a wound to allow healing to begin. I am Olivia Brennan, no longer the forgotten daughter, but a woman who claimed her place in the world. My story isn't one of revenge, though there were moments when that seemed the easiest path. It's about justice, the quiet kind that comes not from punishment, but from truth finally acknowledged. My grandmother gave me that gift, and in honor of her memory, I pass it forward every day to my niece and nephew, to the young women who visit my bookshop, to anyone who has ever felt invisible in their own family. Because we all deserve to be seen. We all deserve to be valued. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is to stand firm in that truth, even when, especially when, it forces those around us to finally open their eyes.